everyone, welcome into a bonus video. I have some free time today and I thought, it's been a while since we've just done a community hangout, and I thought I'd fire that up for today and just talk about what's going on with tech and my take on some of the stuff I've seen published in places like PC World. I'm going to pull that website up and just tell you what's wrong with the articles they're writing, and in my opinion, how they're short-sighted and just looking for clicks for today, that what they're writing isn't really what it appears to be, and they don't seem to care anymore, or maybe this is done with intention, but it's quite misleading what they're writing about these days, and some of it is from a very specific perspective that isn't necessarily wrong, but it isn't also considerate of other perspectives other than their own, without any mention that there are other perspectives. So you only hear their side as though there was only one side, and unless you know for yourself or do the research yourself, you would be convinced there's no other way to conclude a particular situation or solution. When we know from live video experiences, there are often many different ways to solve a problem with a computer. What I'm seeing a lot of lately has been end users blaming the computer for their lack of education. And it's frustrating for me because early on, back in the 90s, people didn't behave this way. They said, gosh, I really need to learn this, I'm screwing it up. Today now, what is hip and cool for people that have been, particularly younger people or people that have gotten very comfortable with their computer, is they immediately assume something's wrong with the computer, or they assume Windows 11 is terrible, or they assume one version of Windows 11 is better than another version of Windows 11, and they want to know which version is best, or just this crazy amount of lack of education resulting in questions that don't make any sense. What we need to focus on as individuals is educating ourselves, empowering ourselves, enlightening ourselves, so that we don't have to embarrass ourselves and humiliate ourselves by willingly and voluntarily putting stuff online that exposes to people who know that you're clueless. So not you specifically, but the people who engage in this. And you'll see it all over, even the people writing articles at Tom's Hardware and PC World. It's everywhere, and it seems to be like the new normal. And so people will say, oh, Windows is terrible and Windows updates are bad, when it's the people that lack the education, that's the problem. And a lot of times what people are complaining about now has to do with their failure to understand the way the systems work, and expecting too much out of systems today. We don't have these AI intelligence systems that know what you mean or can do things for you, and then when you say, hey, go get my, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. You tell the computer to do something very specific, and let's just say it was the Jetsons, Rosie the robot. Go feed the dog, and Rosie the robot kicks the dog out the window. Bye, Astro. You'd say, wow, Rosie the robot's really bad. And in that case, you would be right. But our computers haven't developed to that point. So when your computer's failing to do what you want it to, when your printer doesn't print, when you're trying to get a game to run, it doesn't run, it's usually, not always, a human error, a misunderstanding. You're asking the computer to do something, and the computer is not intelligent enough to tell you, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Instead, it tries. It stumbles and it falls, and then the reaction is to go on social media and say, look how terrible Windows 11 is. It'd be like if I made a beautiful car and then just ran it into a tree and you blame my car. Like, you're the one behind the wheel. That's your fault. You drove the car into the tree, and now you're going to blame the tree, or you're going to blame the car. So I'm seeing so much of that on social media. Watch for it, because I think when you start looking at what you're reading, you'll start identifying quite often many posts from people who refuse to accept responsibility and will not educate themselves. They think, I already know everything, so there's no reason for this to not work. The main reason things with computers don't work overall, I've been in this business 35 years, And while there are lots of reasons things don't work, the most common reason now is people being um, obtuse. They refuse to accept any accountability for their lack of knowledge. They assume they already know everything. And the fact is, when you think about the logic of that, if that were true, they would be able to solve their own problem, a problem they likely wouldn't have had to begin with. So when you're reading some of this stuff on social media, or even some of these content creators that want to blame something that has nothing to do with the problem, it has to do with what they're typing and what they're clicking, or changes they're making in a BIOS or registry changes, all these things that are their own undoing. And in the meantime, those of us who've been in this industry a long time and we have a pretty thorough understanding of logic and programming code and how all of it works together, we generally have systems that are much more reliable than anybody you probably have ever met. These are the people you want to know because they're great people to learn from, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I get a little frustrated sometimes because somebody keeps trying to eat soup with a fork, and you're like, the problem isn't the soup or the bowl. The problem is you're not using the right utensil. And they want to fight and argue to the point now it's so extreme that they will sacrifice their own lives. I've seen road rage incidents on the news where people are so obtuse, stubborn, and ignorant that they would rather die than apologize, say thank you, or suffer any kind of being humbled and a sense of appreciation. They'd rather die. And I think it's because they think there's no way they're going to die. And then when they're dead, they don't know they're dead. Everybody else knows, and they just have lived and died a complete ignorant life, not even ever grasping the concept that they're responsible for their short life and that it was their own fault and that they don't learn from it. It's just a waste. So if you want to be a part of that, and I assume you don't, otherwise you wouldn't be here, don't let me stop you. But for the rest of us, I want you to recognize it when you see it, and then that way you can decide if somebody like that is even worth engaging in conversation. If they're so pig-headed that they won't accept anybody's perspective but their own, and their own comes from information online and not from real-world experience, those people are just lonely instigators. And when they get attention, and you make the attempt to try and bring them on board and explain to them there's many different preferences in this world, meaning I might like something that I think is the best thing I've ever eaten, and you might think it's the most disgusting. There is no right or wrong. It's just expression of how you feel. But how you feel has nothing to do with facts. And what you read online has nothing to do oftentimes with facts, unless we're talking about like historical events, dates, and things that occurred in history. But when we talk about technology and how fast it changes, we have a lot of attitudes that are outdated, where people are stubborn and don't want to learn. We have a lot of people that think whatever they read online is 100% gospel and there's no other way to look at it. And we have people that write articles online that think they're 100% gospel. And they're allowed to do this. But we, as the viewers of this content, it's our responsibility to identify the human slop. There's more. You want to talk about micro slop and AI slop? Humans are the worst slop on the internet. And I look forward to AI slop because by comparison, the human slop overwhelms AI slop by 1,000,000 times. If we can figure out a way to stop the human slop, then we can work on making the AI slop better. But the AI slop doesn't even come close to the human slop online. So it's just a perspective I don't really hear anybody talking about when it's right in front of your face every day and people just aren't seeing it. So it's just food for thought and for you to process that and react how you want to. Don't change, keep doing what you're doing, keep believe everything you read, or don't question anything you hear, right? That's your choice. But if you want to stay on top and be educated and feel like you can engage in an intelligent conversation of a technical nature, what's the word? Bring your evidence, but be ready, or don't engage in that conversation. Otherwise, you're probably going to be ignored or humiliate yourself. And for what? For attention? Sometimes people get the wrong kind of attention and they end up ending their life from just severe public shaming. And that's happened across, you've read about it in the news, where people got in so deep they didn't know how to get out. And rather than just apologize and move on and grow from it, they'd rather die. So these are the mentality of the human slop that exists, just crazy numbers online today. And your choice as to whether or not you want to engage with it, block it, ignore it, or enjoy it for entertainment. However you want to process that is entirely up to you. It's just, I'm trying to show you how to identify spoiled food from ripe, ready to eat. Say, for example, you've got some bananas and I'm trying to show you all of these dark bananas are bad. And you might say, hey, I could take these dark bananas and I can still use them in a banana bread. Great idea. That's a great way of taking something bad and turning it into something good. And you can do the same with this human slop that's all over social media and on YouTube especially. So much human slop. You don't have to do anything. You could just continue to do whatever you're doing, but just what I'm trying to do is plant a seed that you can place a value on something. So if I'm reviewing pizzas and I go on a scale of 0 to 10, this pizza's a 5. When I'm looking at content online, even if it's PC World or Tom's Hardware, some professional site, because that's lost a lot of weight, that word professional. And then we compare that to social media posts on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. How useful was this information? How accurate was it? How beneficial is it? And rate it just like you would rate a food. And then if you want to have that food again, or I don't know, you want to avoid it, that's up to you to decide with your own individual rating scale. But these things are not all equal. Every different pizza is not the same rating. And every different post isn't going to be the same, even coming from the same person, although most of the time, the people that post the slop continue to post slop. So if you block them, or you choose to ignore them, or you choose to continue to follow them, at least you do so being able to put a value on their content where it belongs, so that you don't treat it equally to other people's content. And that will help you to grow as your education and to understand a better way to communicate with people as well, because that kind of communication is one way, and there's nothing you can do about it, whether to engage with it or not to. You might as well not. It'll save you a lot of time. So I just want you to keep that in mind, because when I look at PC World magazine lately, like this last week, I've been keeping an eye on it. Let me bring it up on the screen and let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to come over to my window capture here. Let's take a look at PC World's website. This is live right now, and we're looking at, let's see, Google's AI answers are starting to look like ads. Oh, was that news? Is this something is this new? I don't understand. And are you paying for it? Somebody's paying for this. What entitles you to get it ad-free? What makes you owed? How does this business work? Is this unreasonable? Is this how is this not obvious? I went to the dealership and they wouldn't give me a car for free. Really? Well, let's write a news article about it. Let's see, you're probably missing these 13 useful Google Chrome tools. I would argue you don't need any of these useful Google Chrome tools, and this is a complete waste, and it's just clickbait. But that's for you to decide. There's nothing you need to add to Google Chrome, in my opinion. Maybe RoboForm, maybe some kind of malware blocker like Malwarebytes, or any of the available blockers. Other than that, I'd strongly recommend you stay away from them. PC building has entered its chaos era, and I'm here for the ride. More obvious, duh, this is not news. We already know all this. This one cracks me up. I spent $27 to future-proof my home network forever. Okay, this is a blatant lie or just complete ignorance of how technology works. In this article, this person writes how they upgraded their cabling to category 8 because it's probably never going to be a category 9. So that's as far as the technology of cabling can take us. But we have fiber and we have wireless, and wireless keeps getting better and better, faster. And so the future is probably some kind of fiber, or the future is probably wireless. And then if you look back at this article, like what I'm starting to think I should do is I should like click on one of these articles, and I should grab a capture of the web page, and I should put a calendar reminder in 5 years to see how this has aged and how foolish this author is going to look by realizing that forever was actually only a couple of years. It wasn't. I don't know what your version of forever is, but mine means indefinitely. It doesn't mean 5 years from now. So this idea that you can do something today that future-proofs you when you don't even know what tomorrow has in store, and you don't know what secret projects are being worked on by companies, how can you prepare for something that you're completely oblivious to? And then when it comes out, you realize you just wasted all your money and all your time recabling your house. Now, if you were going to even cable it in such a way that if you said, okay, I future-proofed my home network because what I did was I made the cables very easy to replace without having to go in the attic. I can simply tie a new cable on, pull it through the wall, and I've already got upgraded cables. I'd still argue that what good is that when we're totally Wi-Fi, when Wi-Fi is the cheaper, faster solution than cabling? That's potentially what our future is. We had a corded phone in our kitchen in 1975, and we would have had that phone today. Nothing wrong with it. It would still work today, but why would we? When we can have a wireless phone with battery operation we can carry with us. But we didn't know any better back then. So our assumption in 1975 was, that's a phone, there's nothing better. There's no way to upgrade it to anything better unless it was rotary and you went to push button. And then eventually you could get a cordless phone, which isn't wireless, but cordless. And that gave you some freedom. And then you think, oh, I'm good forever. No, no. There's one thing you can be certain about in the future, and that the future is uncertain. And articles that claim that they're forever or future-proofing, either they've got a crystal ball or a DeLorean that can travel through time, or they're full of crap. This is clickbait. And somebody who's a senior editor is responsible for this, tells you the state of professional journalism in America today. It's not about accuracy, it's not about being helpful, and it's not about being transparent. This is strictly about getting clicks. So if you were to follow this person's advice and you do what they did because they said so, it'll work for you for a while, but it will not satisfy your needs forever. That is a blatant lie, and it's there for a reason. It wasn't a mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing to manipulate you. They know that better than the tech content they're writing. That's what journalism has unfortunately become all too often. And if you wish to engage in it, I'm not telling you not to, but don't be surprised when you find out, if you go back and do your research, like a calendar reminder, how you felt today when you did this, when you listened to this person. Remind yourself to come back in 5 years, what you thought 5 years ago, and see if you don't feel like you've just been played. Now, if you like being played, keep doing it. I would not engage in such activity if I were an author. I would rather find a career doing something else than be responsible for misleading the worldwide public just to earn $1. There's got to be a better way to earn $1. Stop emailing yourself files this free web app shares between any device. Here's another one-sided article that doesn't really tell you the consequences of this, nor does it offer you, look, we've been transferring files between devices for 30 years. All of a sudden, somebody's going to read this and go, oh, there's a web app to do this. There's been a way to do this for 30 years, so we're back to an end user education issue. So the end user reads this, they think this is new. Well, it's the latest take on the app craze, right? But you don't have to download any apps for this. That's just stupid. It's just ignorance at its best. So let's take advantage of these ignorant people and let's sell them stuff that they don't need to buy and create articles that they're going to click on because they don't know any better, rather than educating people and explaining traditionally how files are transferred between devices. Listen, if you've got, here's where I'm going with this as an educator. The students think they know everything because they can use Google, but Google doesn't explain, unless you do the more time and research, it doesn't explain how we got here. So somebody might say, for example, my Windows computer won't talk to my Apple computer because they're not the same system. No. They're wrong, but they don't know they're wrong. They don't know any better, and they're not asking the right questions. Putting it quite simply, if anything can connect to the internet anywhere in the world, then anything else connected to the internet anywhere in the world can transfer files to it, period. I don't care what it is. It could be your car, it could be your phone, it could be Linux, it could be Mac, it could be a Chromebook, it could be Windows, it could be Windows XP. If you can get it online, then you can transfer files to any other thing that can get online, period. That's all that matters. That's the technical side that the uneducated don't understand, the very foundation upon which they're trying to find a solution, when they don't understand how the technology works. So they believe it. They're very easy to fool. And, you know, you collect their money and you take advantage of them, and then they say thank you. Then they go off in social media and say, I just learned that I can transfer files from my phone to my computer if I download this app, and I wanted to share this exciting news, without ever once asking, how have people been doing that for the last 30 years? It never even occurs to them to look for alternatives that are already built into the phone operating system. They're already built into Windows, and you don't need any third-party apps to do it. There's so many different ways to do this. I could sit here for the next 2 hours naming all the possible ways you can transfer files back and forth. So this idea that instead of emailing yourself files, which, by the way, they're not wrong, it does work, but that's a very ignorant way. That's basically saying, I don't really understand how any of this works, and rather than learn how, I just want to get a job done. Right? I don't want to learn how an engine works. I just show me where the gas hole is. Show me how to put gas in it and get out of my way. And you know, those are the worst maintained cars. You don't want to buy that person's used car, do you? It's probably in a complete state of lack of maintenance and degradation, wear and tear and abuse, that the driver has no idea. Oh, that's bad for my car? I don't know. People smoking cigarettes in a brand new car just kills me. I see that. I'm driving down the road. There's somebody with temporary license plates, and they're smoking a cigarette. Cars don't even have ashtrays in them anymore. And this person's smoking a cigarette, stinking up the whole car. And I just hope when they're done with the car, they plan on crushing it. Now, I realize there's ways that they can clean cars with ultrasonic cleaners and things that can get rid of the smell. But it's their car, right? Assuming they bought it. They're not breaking any laws. But it's really just depreciating and ruining this brand new thing they just invested in. Which is like, why did you buy a new car if that's what you were going to do to it? Why didn't you just buy something used? If you were going to abuse the heck out of it and just spoil it for anybody else to ever use it, why? I mean, you can, but why would you? You've completely obliterated the benefit of having a new car, and you've done it the day you drove it off the lot. You lit up that cigarette and immediately started embedding smoke into every material inside of that car. So inevitably, they're going to have burn marks on the seat. Give it time. And all the damage they're causing is not normal wear and tear. Thankfully, smoking isn't as popular as it used to be. But if you see what smoking does to a car after just a couple of years, you can only imagine what their lungs must look like. And it's a tough thing to watch somebody slowly kill themselves. I feel really sorry for those people, but they're adults. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're in denial that it's just not going to happen. I hope they're right. And in the meantime, they're killing everything around them with the secondhand smoke. Plants, carpets, paint. The smoke embeds in the paint into the walls. It can be very, very difficult to get out. So if you just plan on destroying it when you're done, fine. But if you plan on selling it when you're done, you can expect to take a huge loss on your investment. And why you would do that is just bad, just not respecting the value of a dollar. When these people who claim they don't have any money are doing that with nice things, this is why we can't have nice things mentality. Sounds like what's happening. And as long as they keep that attitude, they'll never achieve any level of real success because they keep destroying their own success. They keep ripping it apart voluntarily and destroying anything good in their life. And there's just a lot of people like that now. And you could say back in the 70s, we didn't know any better, but we know now, and people still do it anyway. So I just try to avoid those people. When I see I don't usually see somebody smoking in a car, I smell it. I could have my windows up and the air conditioning on, sitting at a red light. Somebody's smoking a cigarette, and then sure enough, there's somebody right over there with the window down and they're blowing smoke out the window. Like, that's really helping. Just think about, they're inhaling that right into their body, their temple, with poison. And they won't stop. They just one cigarette after the other, in the house, in the car, everywhere they go. They're allowed to. And I'm allowed to stay the hell away from them. That is what we call a problem that solves itself. And then, when I'm shopping for a used car, you can usually tell when somebody smoked in it. No matter how much they clean it, there's a physical, oftentimes stain or burns, as well as an embedded smell right into the plastic that you can try and cover up, with an air freshener or something, and it might help. But why would anybody do that to themselves? And when they traded the car in or they sold it, they didn't get as much for it. So everything they're doing is hurting themselves. And if somebody is self-destructive like that, and they're insisting on being self-destructive, my advice is steer clear of them. Don't try and change them. I mean, you can try if you want to, but you're probably just wasting your breath. You're going to get frustrated. So just steer clear of them and let them drive themselves right off the cliff. Bye. It's shameful that we're living in such a society where instead of fixing problems, we'd rather just let the problems solve themselves. But it's gotten so bad, especially in social media, that the best thing I can tell you when someone's driving off a cliff is get out of the way of the car. Preserve yourself. Preserve yourself first before you try and preserve anybody else. Stay alive, stay healthy, stay clear of jail. Don't get involved. All right, let me see who's joining us here on this last-minute Saturday broadcast. Jump over to the email. Oh, and I have an email. Right on. All right, let me get my glasses. Get my glasses out. I'll get my good ones. This will distort everything more than 2 feet away. Let's see what we got. Oh, our friend Buster with an Amazon gift card. Thank you, Buster. He said this is it's after midnight and I can't sleep and I'm in a little pain. Thank you for today's show, your friend Buster. Hey, Buster, I'm sorry to hear you're in pain, but maybe we can distract you a little bit, get your mind off of it. Thank you for your continual support. I'm sorry to hear you can't sleep. Stay tuned. I'll put you to sleep. Just keep listening to me complain. Some monotone voice just droning on. And another thing. Let's see. All right, let me get rid of those glasses because I can't read the screen. It's too far away with these magnifiers. Let's just get the regular distance ones here. The distance ones only help me for reading. They don't, like in driving and things like that. The the scale of things are so big. It seems pretty darn near in focus to me. And for the most part, most of the text I can read, but it's a little bit of a struggle. It's like it's in standard definition, and then when I put these on, it becomes high definition. So I much prefer the clarity. But yeah, I don't drive with these on. It's not yet. I'm sure the day's coming. Gary Tatum says hello. There's Luke Greenia. Said, I'm here to pick up my mini PC. Welcome in, Luke. Los Santos Pro says hola. There's Maralina, our channel administrator, saying hello in the chat. And I see Damelin and Joseph saying hello. Leva says, currently having the leaf blowers are safe for PC dusting argument with some friends. Yeah, I wouldn't waste your breath. Listen, if somebody doesn't believe you, that tells you how much faith and support you get from your friends. You know, having grown up with very little self-esteem and me personally, very little self-confidence, what would have helped me was somebody to stand behind me saying, you can do it, right? A lot of people don't understand that when I'm telling you you can do this, they think I'm being bossy. But instead, in my mind, I'm thinking about what I wanted to hear. When I lacked the confidence, I needed somebody to stand behind me. I didn't need somebody to do it for me. I have my own self-doubt, and so to have somebody tell me as a voice louder than my own self-doubt that I believe in you, you're capable, and even if you make a mistake and you fail, so what? Try it again. And if you fail, try it again. And if you fail, try it again. You have the same 5 fingers on each hand and 5 toes on each foot as everybody else. You deserve to be here as much as everybody else. You must have air just like everybody else. You're not that different from everybody else. And if you are inspired by watching somebody accomplish something and you say, I wish I could do that, you don't have to wish. Get off your butt and do it. That's the only thing that separates you from other people, is your willingness to get off your butt. Now, if you're not willing to get off your butt, and somebody is encouraging you, come on, let's go, you know, let's do this, and you're like, stop bossing me around. Wow, what a huge, obstinate, obtuse mental block we've got to deal with. So I won't deal with it. If I have a friend that wants to tell me what I can't do, they're not going to be my friend much longer. If I tell somebody it's safe to use a leaf blower and they say, I don't think so, okay, that conversation's over. We're done. We can, if it's a good friend and that's the only thing we're arguing about or we're disagreeing about, let's change the subject. Because now you've offended me, and I don't want to have this level of discussion with you anymore. So it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care if you believe I'm alive. I don't really care if you believe I exist. It's not really a discussion worth having. I think, therefore I am, and any further discussion to question that is a preposterous and absurd way that is profoundly disrespectful, discourteous, and narcissistic. I cannot possibly waste time with people like that, and I don't want them in my lives. That's, for me, time to reevaluate how much more time I want to spend with that friend. Because I don't need friends like that. I can find strangers online that'll insult me and tell me how terrible I am. They're a dime a dozen. You can throw a stick and hit at least 4 of them. And just close your eyes and throw a stick. There's so many of them. It's the most simple, lazy, inconsiderate, rude. Why do I need friends that behave like that? I want a friend that says, hey, you know, I don't agree with that. And I say, okay, well, that's fine. I'm not going to try and change their mind. What's in it for me? Nothing. I provided information. I've led the horse to water. The horse doesn't want to drink it. Die. You know what I mean? Suffer. Whatever. I don't care. I tried. I did the right thing. I made the attempt. You spat on it. You dismissed it. I won't do that. I won't make that same mistake again. My apologies for trying to be helpful for you. I realize now that my time would have been better spent helping somebody who actually sees the value in it. You don't. If I have to convince you of my value, there's too many people on the planet. There's 8 billion people plus on the planet Earth. I don't give a rat's ass about any one of them as far as that goes. I don't care who they are. When you disrespect me to that level or you dismiss me, you are now behaving like a complete stranger online. And I don't need to seclude you away from everybody else anymore. I don't need you to have that spot in my life. That's a very valuable spot to me. And I want somebody who deserves to be in that spot, called friend. Otherwise, you can just go into the bigger spot, the big parking lot out back called the rest of the planet. It's a big planet. There's plenty of room for all of us. And let's just go separate ways. You go live your life, be happy. I'll go live my life and be happy. And I will align myself with individuals who build me up, who support me, who are kind to me. And it's okay to have disagreements, but the minute you start getting frustrated, you both as friends need to preserve the friendship and realize this is self-destructive behavior. It's not worth it to either one of you. And if neither one of you will stop, then you both have problems. And it only takes one of you to disengage. So be the bigger person, save yourself the headache, and stop doing it to yourself. It's not much different than grabbing a knife and cutting yourself. Why would anybody do that sort of thing? Something is not going, whatever it is, isn't going to get fixed until you respond differently. The minute you start responding differently and you excommunicate those people out of your life, just don't have time for them anymore. You took time out of your life to help somebody, and they disrespected that and didn't value it. Find somebody else who appreciates it, period. Your life and how you feel every day will be directly related upon who you choose to engage with in real life. And online, you know, who cares? Is it real? Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. And it's in your control is all I'm trying to say. Somebody doesn't want to use a leaf blower, don't. Who cares? Don't use a leaf blower. In fact, if you want to have fun with them, if they're a friend, then go, no, you're absolutely right. You should not use it. If I were you, if I were you, I would not listen to me. Because clearly, using a leaf blower for somebody like you to do it would be dangerous, and you shouldn't do it. You're just not. Agree with them. Say, you're absolutely right. If I were you, I would say the same thing. It's kind of insulting, but it's also supportive. If somebody says, hey, you're an idiot, and you go, well, you know, if I were in your shoes, you know, I'd probably think I was an idiot too. Which is a really clever way of telling somebody, if you were just as stupid as you could possibly be, if I were just as stupid as you are, then I would think exactly the same thing you're thinking, when they might hear it as a compliment to further emphasize how disconnected they are. And if that's the case, then you can then value that person just like you value a rate of food. Hey, this pizza's a 5. That person's a 5. Try and keep your life surrounded with 8s and 9s and 10s. And I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about personality. I'm talking about look at how improvisation works. If you learn about improvisation, improvisation is always about agreeing with what the other person says and then building on it. But it's done for humor. Improvisation is a very clever psychological communication tool which can take you very far in corporate America to get you promoted. And all you have to do is take whatever somebody says and add the word yes and continue it. When you learn how to use yes and, people are going to like you a lot more. And you just have to do it in a way that helps people feel good about their answers. It doesn't matter if they're wrong. They just want to feel good about it. So you can provide them as a friend if you want to. You can provide them with that good feeling by answering anything they say with yes and. And if you watch any sort of improvisational comedy, I'll tell you a great example of this is there's a content creator on YouTube, and the channel is called The Chit Show, C-H-I-T. and it's the Groundlings, which is an improvisational group. You don't hear the word no. Everything is yeah. And then they build on that. So yes and. Yeah, followed by, or sometimes it's just yeah. Sometimes you don't have to follow it, just go yeah. It's that easy. And if you want to see how it's done by people that are really good at it, check out the Chit Show, because it's freaking hilarious. And Chit doesn't argue. No matter if he's being threatened, if the boss comes in and says, you're going to lose your job, he's like, yeah. So you're going to get back to work? Yep. You're going to have the budget done on time? Uh-huh. And then he just goes back and does what he was playing video games on his computer. The boss just walks away thinking he got what he wanted. He feels good. And there was no emotional arguing or contention. Yeah, just say yeah. Okay. If somebody, if I'm saying, hey, you use a leaf blower, the leaf blower would damage my computer. I'd say, yeah, well, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way. Yeah, you probably shouldn't use it. I agree. End of discussion. Everybody got what they wanted. The communication is so psychological that if you don't learn how to communicate, you become a victim of your own form of communication by not learning the psychology behind it. We know now how the average human brain works and how it responds. And if we can apply that in much the same way that we might know how the YouTube algorithm works, and we know if we do a certain kind of thumbnail and we title it a certain way, we're more likely going to get that click than if we didn't do it that way. That doesn't mean your video is going to go viral, and it doesn't mean everybody's going to feel a desire to click it. But it is a common manipulation technique that does have measurable, provable results compared to just making it up as you go. And maybe by luck you get a very popular video, but usually it's contrived and manipulated, and that's how commercials and marketing works. They manipulate and contrive people who don't know any better and who don't question it and believe it to be fact, and then they go off and start evangelizing it. And then, here we are. So you can choose to be on the receiving side of that, or you can choose to process the information in a more intellectual way that keeps you not necessarily emotionally involved with the information, because the information isn't you, right? You may not like or agree with the information, but it's not like somebody's insulting you personally. They just may be questioning what you believe to be true. And when you know damn well good and solidly what you're saying is true, and they're the ones who don't know what they're talking about, just agree with them, because you don't have to feel the need to prove them wrong. You just need to give them their space, and they will eventually hit the wall and realize at some point, in most cases, what you were telling them. They just weren't ready to know how to process that information yet. And you can't speed up the clock. Everybody learns on their own time, and some people learn more effectively by making mistakes, and they may never tell you. They may quietly experience something and realize they were wrong, and to save face and their own ego and pride, they'll never admit it to you, but now they know. And you'll find when you have future conversations and other things you disagree with, they may not fight back so hard. And if you simply don't engage in it and simply say to them, oh yeah, you're right, yeah, if I were you, I would feel exactly the same way, is a very simple thing to say. Or, the very common, we'll agree to disagree and change the subject. You don't have to take their bait. They are baiting you. When they disagree with you and they challenge you, they're trying to manipulate you like you're a puppet, and they're pulling on your strings. You have to consent to that. You have to give them permission. Realize that's on you. That's not on them. That's on you. You like people to control you like a puppet? Be my guest. I don't. So I feel very strongly about maintaining my own self-control and not being manipulated and controlled subconsciously by another party. And sometimes I do fall victim to it. But once I'm aware of it, I'll immediately stop what I'm doing, and I realize, oh, I just took some bait. And it's nothing you can just do overnight. You practice it and practice it and practice it. And the more you do it, it'll become second nature. and it'll just become who you are over time. You won't even realize you're doing it. What you will realize when you sit back and think about it is how much less stressful your life has become because of how you're choosing to respond and how you're recognizing baiting tactics. It's not just YouTube and social media that bait you. People in real life do it all the time. So if you can find a way to sort of join in on it, like improvisationally, and say yes and, even when you don't agree with it, who cares? If somebody says to me, oh, this place is terrible. Let's say we're at McDonald's. This place is so slow and the food's terrible and the prices are high, and you can say, oh, I disagree. I really like it here. You could say that. Where do you think that conversation is going to go? Or you could say, yeah, and they're not open 24 hours, and they don't have filet mignon here, 100% I agree with you, it's terrible. And yet you're both in line ordering. So you got to understand the absurdity of the discussion to begin with. If it was so terrible, why are either of you there? I had a guy once, I was at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and I'm in this big long line to get some lunch. And I'm not that social, but if somebody will talk to me, if somebody engages in conversation, I'm more than happy to talk to them. I don't initiate the conversation with strangers because I'm afraid it's not invited and they might just be trying to be polite, that they really don't want to talk to me and that I might be bothering them. That's internal with me and how I was raised. But if somebody says something to me, then I know I've got a green light to talk to them. So this guy is in line, I think he's in front of me, and he looks back at me and we're just staring at the walls waiting for this line to move. And he goes, how's your day going? I said, it's going pretty good. You? He says, oh, not good. I go, really? It's Consumer Electronics Show. It's all this cool stuff. What's going on? Why would that be bad? He goes, well, I just had somebody try and steal my demo unit, whatever it was. He had a booth at CES and he was showcasing some piece of hardware. And I can't remember any more than that. And someone tried to steal it. And it really pissed him off. And I said, well, I mean, what I said was, well, isn't that a good thing? And he looked at me like I was crazy. How is that a good thing? I go, well, isn't the point of coming to CES to showcase your product and have people want your product? Isn't that what you're here for? Well, yeah, but not to steal it. I go, yeah, but if they're willing to go to jail for your product, could there be a higher compliment to you as a designer or as somebody who works in that company that you have a product somebody's willing to go to jail to get their hands on it? Isn't that the best thing, the biggest compliment? They're not just being polite by saying, oh yeah, I like it. No, they like it enough, they're willing to go to jail. And he smiled, he goes, I didn't think of it that way before. I go, well, to me, that's the whole point of CES. There's so many competitors showcasing their products that they didn't want to steal theirs, they wanted to steal yours. And how else would you know that until it happened? And now you can say, oh, I have actual evidence that we're on the right path to something people want. Guy's day got better. And I didn't do anything. It was just words. His whole attitude, even his body language kind of slipped in, and he was like smiling. He's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I see. You're right. Thank you. And I felt good about it. I felt, look, I just turned that guy around. We're both looking at the same exact thing, but he's looking at it from this angle, and I'm looking at it from this angle, but what we're looking at hasn't changed. Just how we've defined what we're looking at. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? You make that choice every time you evaluate and judge something. You are making a choice, period. And once you realize if you're making a choice that's very negative, you can ask yourself in practice, can I find anything positive about this? And get your mind out of the trap. That's a gutter, basically, that walls you into negative thinking. And force yourself to become self-aware and say, if somebody said they'll give me $20 for every positive thing I could say about this. How much money could they pay me? And then before you know it, you're out of that little gutter, and now you're into the positive gutter. And then somewhere in there, you ask yourself to balance those, put it on a scale. Let's take all the bad things and let's take all the good things, and then see where it lines in your head in your judgment. But that's not usually the way humans behave. But we certainly expect our justice system to behave that way. But we as humans, God forbid, we hold ourselves to that level of fairness. Let's call it fairness, where we're always trying to see the other side. And especially when somebody's really ranting and raving about something, like me going off on these articles. Is there a plus side to it? Well, of course there's a plus side to it. But my argument is that, well, it's great for engagement and it's great to build community, to be able to share in common interests. I feel, personally, that the information is a 5 out of a 10 because they're not giving you the rest of the information. And I don't know why they're not doing it. Do they just not know? Will it be less effective in marketing, that it'll be less clickable? I don't know. I don't know why people do that. But it is what it is, and we can at least call it out and let people be aware of it. So that way, how you choose to value that information as being complete or incomplete versus what it is appearing to be. And you can allow it to be as it appears to be, or you can kind of take a closer, more scrutinized look at it and see what's missing. So if somebody serves me a steak and says, do you like the steak? It's a great steak, yes. How would you rate it? I'd rate it a 5. Well, I thought you said it was great. Yeah, well, you didn't give me a salad, you didn't give me any fries, you didn't give me a drink, you didn't give me... So the steak itself is good, but you didn't complete the meal. I don't just want to have the steak. I'd like to have some other things. I'd like to have a dessert. I'd like to have an appetizer. When you provide all of it, then you're going to be likely at a 10. But if you're making out like, well, nobody around here eats anything but the steak. We don't do that here. Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm just telling you that, what you presented me was 1/4 of a meal, maybe 1/2 of a meal. And I can't rate this as a meal because it isn't. To you it might be, but to me it's not a complete meal. It's incomplete. And you never offered it, and you never told me that things were missing. As far as you're concerned, that is the meal. As far as I'm concerned, I'm missing half my meal. Who's right and who's wrong? All right, where was I in the chat room? Al says, thank you, Carey and Mara and members, for another fabulous live stream. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Al. One of the things I do, and I'm not recommending you do it, but because I was a teenager in the 1980s, raised as Generation X, there are slogans that we used back then when people behave this way, and I don't know why we're still not using them. One is, make me. Somebody's trying to tell you to do something, and they're in no position of authority. They have no power. What we used to say is, make me. That was our response. 2 words. End of discussion. In the 1980s, when somebody would say, oh, well, like in this example, if you use an air leaf blower on a computer, it'll break the computer. Show me. In fact, I'll even let you use my computer. You don't have to use yours. Or we would say, show me, and if it does any actual damage, I'll pay for it. That's it. Put up or shut up. If you're not willing to prove it, you're full of crap. I'm willing to either let you use my computer or to pay for anything that breaks. But first, you use the leaf blower. Let me watch my hand. I'm just going to be an observer. You do it however you want to. Use whatever leaf blower you want to use. Show me it break. Show me. If you're not willing to do that, then you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because I do know what I'm talking about. And if you said, okay, Carey, show me it doesn't break, no problem. Easy peasy. I have no problem with that. I would not say, no, I'm not going to show you. Here, you want to see? Now you want to be enlightened and you want evidence? Wonderful. That's awesome. I would love the opportunity to show you the evidence. Okay? And when people are really stuck in their ways and they absolutely let their ego and their pride get in the way, then anything you do is pointless. And you'll find out afterwards when they go, okay, but the only reason that worked is because of this. You go, okay, listen, buddy, we just agreed that it worked, right? You saw it work? Yes. But now you're coming up with excuses on why it worked? Right. Okay, you have a nice day. Because, wow, you're far gone. I had a boss at Intel, and I've told the story several times, where he insisted that the copy command in DOS did not actually copy files. If they were like the same name, it didn't actually overwrite the other file of the same name on the destination. That you had to use xcopy, and preferably with the verification switch on. And I said, that's not how the operating system works. Now, I didn't know he was a boss. I just thought he was another employee, and it was my first day. First impressions, that guy hated my guts. Because here's the way the conversation went. Hi, I'm the new guy, and I'm sitting around a table, and this guy's telling these other guys, which I later realized he was the boss talking to his underlings. I was potentially one of his underlings that hadn't been decided yet, so I was just kind of hanging out until that decision was made, and I don't know anybody. And I really feel like being at Intel was a bit over my head, and I didn't belong there because I didn't have enough education. Boy, was I wrong. I was far more understanding of how computers work than 90% of my coworkers. And that was eye-opening. And I realized my own self-confidence and my own lack of what's the word I want? Just believing in myself. I just didn't feel I was ever good enough. I don't need strangers to tell me I'm not good enough. That rolls around in my head all the time. No matter how good you are, you can always be better. No matter how much weight you can lift, you can always lift more. No matter how smart you are, you could always be smarter. Right? There's no sort of line that I could cross over where I could feel that level of confidence, because that line doesn't exist. So no matter how good I am, it's never good enough. That's, again, how I was raised. So when this guy is telling me you got to use copy and not, or he's telling the whole group, I'm like, that's not how it works. Yes, it is. I go, well, let me show you. Show me. No, I don't have time for that. I go, but you have time to be wrong? I mean, if I was wrong, I'd want to know. Wouldn't you want to know if you were wrong? Oh, fine. And he gets up and we do the experiment on a computer. It's just him and I. The rest of the people stayed behind in the cafeteria. And it works exactly the way I said it would, and he was unable to prove that it didn't. And I said, so you see what I'm saying? Well, it's not an I told you so. It's just, are you on board now? And he said, I don't know what to tell you, except that one day it's going to bite you in the butt. And he walked away. Later in my employment, I ended up not working for that guy, thankfully. Imagine him being my boss. I ended up working in the laptop department, of which I was the one of one employee. And I worked in a lab that I shared with this other guy, really cool dude, really liked this guy. We got along. I don't even know what his job was, but he didn't. We just shared we were in a lab. We didn't have a cubicle. We had a proper lab. And he says, one of the coworkers came up to me one day, just somebody I'd never met before, and he says, oh, you're Carey. And I go, yeah. He goes, oh, I heard about you from the boss guy, this other department. And I'm thinking, oh, I guess he's here to fire me. I'd only been there like a week, 2 weeks. And he says, word for word, he says, I've heard Jack thinks you're an asshole. And I thought, oh boy, this is it. I'm picturing in my head collecting my things and leaving the building. But before I can process the thought, he continues. He says, he thinks I'm an asshole too. And I think you and I might work really well together. And I have a special project at Charles Schwab. If you want to make extra money after hours, I need somebody to help me. And you sound like just the guy. So all those things I thought were negative were actually benefits. And that opportunity wouldn't have been afforded to me, or I would have never been considered had those negative things not happened. So were those still, looking back on it, was that a bad thing? It wasn't intentional that I called this guy out in front of his employees. I didn't know any better. I'm only interested in the facts, not the feelings. And what he was telling his employees was wrong. It was completely inaccurate. And when I asked him to prove it, he couldn't be bothered. And then I twisted his arm and he's like, okay, I'll prove it. And then he couldn't prove it. And then he couldn't explain it and said, I don't know what to tell you, but one day it's going to bite you on the butt. That's a hell of a first day and a first impression. Turns out there's probably nothing I could have done better than that to establish myself as respectable at Intel. Of all places where I thought, I'm in over my head here. This is a bunch of propeller heads. No, it isn't. It is not what you think it is. There are some very, very smart people working at Intel, but not in the desktop support arena. Maybe the people who are engineering the chips, you know, the engineers. But as far as like the technical support, desktop support, help desk, networking architects, they're all just people. And they all make mistakes. And the really good ones are humble. They don't rub into your face how smart they are. They'll sit down and have lunch with you, and they'll talk to you just like a normal human. And if you have a misunderstanding, they'll be glad to correct you. And of course, consider the source. When I worked at the power company, there was this guy, and Mara and I met at this power company. We both worked there. And there was a guy who was pretty well respected on the networking side of things. And I don't remember, Mara can probably tell me, I don't remember what his position was in the company, but he kind of worked alone and was defining certain rules and policies with regards to the network. Well, I got to talking to this guy and I found him fascinating. But what surprised me is he found me fascinating. And he'd just start hanging out with me. And I felt honored. I was like, wow, this guy thinks, this guy is way up here and I'm way down here, and he wants to hang out with me. So we would get into these discussions, and I would tease him about things like, you know, he'd say, well, you got to check the router. And I'm like, you got to check the what? The router. I go, you mean the router? That's what I said. That's not what you said, man. And he's like, are you an engineer? And I go, no. And he goes, well, why not? You think exactly like an engineer. And I'm like, because my parents didn't prepare me for that. And I didn't have any self-confidence. If I was raised by different parents, I probably would have gone to a decent college and been encouraged to do so. My parents were like, why don't you just join the military, you loser? That's not exactly what they said, but that's what I heard. Since you're so aimless and clueless and useless, why don't you just join the military? They'll make a man out of you. That's what you need. And I was very resistant against that idea that I wasn't capable without help, right? That you need the military to help you. And I didn't believe I needed that help. And so I set out to prove myself to my parents. And then when I did, my parents said, the only reason you're successful on your own was to prove me wrong. And had I not challenged you, you'd still be a loser. So no matter what I did, they would manipulate it into making me still be a loser. Like, this is some deep psychological stuff that my parents did to me, but they didn't know any better. Like, they really thought they were doing this for my good by just diminishing any sense of self-esteem or self-confidence. If I gained a little bit, they took it away from me instantly. That's not a proper way to raise somebody. Can I just tell you? And there's no guidebook or rules on how to be a parent. And so my parents, they're making it up as they go. And Lord only knows what their parents said to them that made them this way. I imagine my life was easier than theirs. But boy, it wasn't easy. And that's how they taught. You know, that's how everybody in my family, well, my siblings were raised all to the same standard for the most part. And being separated from that arena, from that sort of environment and atmosphere, I guess is the word I want, in seeing how other people's parents treated them and seeing how people behaved in the workplace, by just simply comparing myself to what other people do instead of what my family was doing, I was able to break away by myself without any help. And it shows you the power that we have as people, individual human beings. When we set our mind to something, nothing can stop us. The only thing, the biggest obstacle, at least in my case, that was in my way was me. And once I figured that out, you know, for the longest time, I was trying to figure out what's wrong. What's wrong with me? And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's wrong with me because my parents had me convinced, and so did some teachers and other students, that because I was different, that was bad. And you should get on board like the rest of us. So what's wrong with you, right? So I'm trying to figure out, why do I have no self-confidence? Why was I so shy and so lacking of self-esteem when everybody else seemed to have it in spades? Why? What made the cool kids cool? Why were they cool and I wasn't? How come? And I studied. I went to the library and I took out books, and there was one book I read that just changed everything, and it was called Life 101, Let's Get Off Our Butts, by a guy named Peter McWilliams, who says the only reason you're holding this book in your hands is because I did it myself. I went to hundreds of publishers and they all told me no, my book wasn't good enough and they wouldn't publish it. So I published it myself. I got no help from anybody. Everybody told me I was wasting my time and I wasn't good enough. So I did it anyway, without their help. And in the book, one of the things that's pretty interesting for me was that people have been suffering this since the dawn of mankind. He goes and he has quotes, whether they're fictional movie quotes or in most cases, historical quotes from kings and queens from 1,000 years ago, and poets that are suffering with this self-deprecation, lack of belief in themselves and what's wrong with them. And the question was simply put, is it possible the reason you can't find an answer to what's wrong with you is because there's nothing wrong with you? Are you trying to find an answer to a question that doesn't exist? And if that's the case, then maybe what's wrong with you is that you are convinced, whether it's because of my parents or society drilling it into my head, that I have adapted it as a truth. Maybe there is nothing wrong with you at all, except that you think there's something wrong with you. And if you just think about that for a second, if there's nothing wrong, if you believe there's nothing wrong with you, that you're okay, and that this is a problem everybody else has, then you can't solve the problem. There is no problem to solve. The problem was believing you have a problem. And I see that a lot when people ask questions about, what if my computer does this, or what about, whatever it could happen to be about, trying to predict the future. So how can I prevent that future? You can't. Generally speaking, you can't. And in most cases, the people who do that are protecting themselves against something that never was going to happen anyway. And we refer to that as anxiety. So they're trying to fix a problem they don't have, likely would never have, and they're trying to prevent it from happening, which likely, if they didn't do anything to prevent it from happening, would not have happened to begin with. So I'm always emphasizing, wait till you actually have a problem. And this goes back to myself. What is the problem? Well, the problem is these people say these things. Okay, but you can't control what people say. What are you hoping a book is going to teach you that's going to change what people say? What is it that you're doing that you could change to fix what's wrong? Well, specifically, I'd like to have more self-esteem. I'd like to have more self-confidence. I'd like to be more social and, make eye contact. Well, work on that. Make eye contact and talk to people. Force yourself into uncomfortable situations, but be friendly. And if you're shut down, that's not your fault. If I walk up to somebody and say hello and they say get lost, I didn't do anything wrong. That's their problem, not mine. If I ask a girl to dance at a club when I'm, 21 years old and she goes, "What, with you?" That doesn't mean I'm unwanted or I'm ugly. I don't know why people think these things. That person could be just hanging out with friends and not really interested. Or that person may only like guys that are 6 feet tall at 35 years old and drive a Ferrari. How is that me feeling bad about myself? That's the person with the problem. I was being nice. I made an offer. It was declined. That's not bad. And you shouldn't feel bad about it because somebody says no. That's the problem, right? People blame themselves, or at least I did, that it wasn't good enough. When in fact, in most cases in my life, what I've discovered is it's the other person that has the problem. Even my mother, once I realized this at about 19 years old, I started testing it. I said, I think I know what I'm doing wrong with my parents. I'm engaging with them. I'm letting them control the narrative. And at 19 years old, I was done with it. I was done with it at 12, but I didn't know what to do about it. And my mother would say, I have a problem when you do this or that. And I'd say, so I have a problem or you have the problem? What did you just say? And I remember the first time I did that to my mother and she laughed. She said, I have the problem. I said, well, you should work on it. I got to go. Bye. I didn't give her any opportunity to come back. I just wanted that last word and I wanted that to rotate around in her head. That's your problem. You said it yourself. That's not my problem. So why don't you work on that? And do you know things got better for me? Do you know that my parents treated me better when I started to question what they were saying? Instead of acting emotionally on it, I processed it as information. And as a child, I used to emotionally respond with tears or I would get angry. And instead I said, treat it like a lawyer in a courtroom. I was watching like TV shows like LA Law, stuff like that. And no matter how nasty a lawyer gets in a courtroom, they never get angry. And they keep a clear head. Now, granted, this is all fictionalized television, but it's based on reality. And I thought, that's who I want to be. I want to be the person who can take whatever the other person's got verbally, not let it affect me emotionally, and respond back clear-headed with a follow-up question that basically flips the mirror onto them without any aggression or insults. Just a sincere question. And by watching courtroom television shows and watching the way the attorneys would make accusations and ask questions without getting angry or crying, that was the key for me to start changing the way I process information, especially from people I looked up to and I wanted approval from, like my parents. Then the next step after that was realizing when my parents admitted, there was a conversation with my dad I'll never forget where I questioned him and I said, I don't talk to you in the way that you talk to me. I have lips and a tongue. Blood pumps through my veins just like yours. And at any point in my entire life, I could say these nasty things that you just said to me. And yet I don't do that. Have you ever stopped to wonder why? Because I'm capable of saying mean and nasty things to you like you say to me. And yet I never have. Why do you think that is, Dad? And what my dad said just about took me off my feet. He said, well, son, I guess you're a better man than me. I don't know if you understand how impactful that is after 19 years, that it finally occurred to me to have this level of discussion with my father, and everything changed from that moment forward. It changed how I heard him, because now he basically admitted he doesn't really know what he's doing as a father. He's just admitted it, and that he didn't mean anything by it, that he just didn't really think it through. He's flawed. And when you call him on it, instead of retaliating, but more like an attorney in a courtroom, unemotional at the insult that he just told me, I did not respond in kind. I responded like an attorney. From watching TV, not from my parents. And when he was faced with that question, I heard what I've been wanting to hear for a long time, a compliment from people I looked up to who never, ever gave me a compliment. I mean, never. It was only correction or nothing. And that was the first time, and everything changed after that. First of all, that was a level of discussion we'd never had, and it was the beginning of something new. And how I interpreted his words weren't defined the same way anymore, since he wasn't this perfect person that he appeared to be, and he admitted it, and that he mishandled the situation, he misspoke, and his excuse was, you know, I was a teenager in the 1950s, and I still have that mentality. I don't know any better. But you're right. Everything from that point forward changed and got better. But as long as I continued to allow them to have that control over me, part of that book I was talking about mentioned that nobody can have control over you unless you give them consent. So stop giving them consent if you don't like it. That's not their responsibility, that's yours. This book, cover to cover, page after page, was filled with information that in my life I could not find anywhere else, and in all the other books I read, this one spoke to me. And unfortunately, that man had passed away. I would love to have been able to talk to him and say thank you to him and how he turned my life around, you know, made everything better by showing me things that no one else showed me. And those are perspectives. And those perspectives are important when diagnosing computers. So when people have this perspective that something's wrong with the computer, what I'm learning is what they're really saying is they don't know what they're doing. Most of the time, when I'm engaged in trying to help somebody who is convinced there's something wrong with the computer, what I'm trying to do gently but quickly, this is the hard balance, is get them to tell me exactly what the problem is so I can understand how they got to that conclusion, instead of starting as though their conclusion were real and accurate, because it's a huge waste of my time. I'd say 80% of the time, minimally, they're wrong. Their conclusion is completely wrong, and if we're going to build from that forward, we're wasting time. So I don't mean disrespect by it, but what I'm trying to get to is what led you to that conclusion? Show me the problem. Let me see it. Okay. Sometimes they're right, but not often. A lot of times they're so off base it has one thing has nothing to do with the other. And I'm trying to be gentle. I'm trying to be quick, and I'm trying to be gentle. And people bristle quite often. And it's like, okay, so you asked for help, but you didn't want it because you only wanted it a certain way. When it's a customer paying me, that's one thing. When it's something I'm doing to help somebody, I'm done. Find your help somewhere else, because they're not really looking for help. They're looking to have their emotional needs met, and they're looking for vindication. I'm not going to vindicate ignorance. If you want to do that, find somebody else. That's not my job. But if you want the help, I will help you, and I'm not going to make you feel bad about it. Like, I can't control how you feel about it, but that won't be my intention. And it sometimes doesn't matter what you say, their mind is made up. Fair enough. Bye. You know what I mean? Like, I tried. I feel good that I tried. I didn't give up on people the way people gave up on me. But once they make it clear I should be giving up on them, then I'll agree with you. I should. But I always leave my door open. I always say, oh, if you ever change your mind, you want to take another stab at it, let me know. Otherwise, I'll leave you alone. I won't bring it up ever again. But if you ever want to bring it up and you want to revisit it, I'll be happy to try again. But I'm not going to push you where you don't want to get pushed. I got other things to do. And there's other people that appreciate what I do. And that's okay. It's amazing how much of this is aligned with computer repair because you're still dealing with people. And a lot of computer repair is people repair. It's tutoring individuals on, somebody says, in the chat room, somebody said they wanted an old copy of Microsoft Office because new versions of Office scramble their older documents. Okay. This conclusion that you need a new version of Office to open up older documents or they don't format right on the screen, that's not a problem with Office. That's a problem with the user not being educated. So rather than the user ask for the education, they say, can you help keep me stupid so I don't have to learn anything? I cannot. That's not what I do. There might be somebody else that will do that for you, but I would not do that. But if you want to be educated and learn, I can show you what you're doing wrong. Instead of blaming Microsoft Office, I can show you. Here's how you can open these documents without losing your formatting. And in fact, you could look the information up yourself. Like, what does everybody else on the planet do that has old documents that don't open correctly in Microsoft Office? We all just suffer? No, of course not. So my first thought would be, how does everybody else do this? This isn't a unique problem. It's not common, but there's plenty of people that still use outdated word processors because I have clients and they'll send me a WordPerfect document that they can't figure out how to open in Microsoft Word. And they send me an attachment and they say, Carey, can you convert this so we can open it in Word? Now, I could teach them how to do it themselves, but they don't do it often enough that the information is going to retain. So rather than having to keep teaching them again and again and again, I just say, let's save each other some time. Forward the document to me and ask me to convert it for you. It takes me 5 seconds. And then I will reattach resave the conversion. And then I'll email it back to you. And that's our system. They don't have to learn. If this was happening a lot, then I'd say, okay, let's get you trained. Let's get some training and maybe get a notepad and take notes. But I'm not going to make that investment on a 5-second fix. The first question I ask myself when I'm trying to fix a problem, the very first question I ask myself is, has anybody else had this problem before me, and what did they do to fix it? Right there. You will more often than not find your own answers, especially with AI chatbots. They're very, very good at this. If I'm having a problem that I can't find online that nobody else is describing, then I question how I'm phrasing it. Maybe I'm searching for it wrong. So it comes back onto me. Notice how I keep reflecting it back to me. How could I approach this from a different angle? Let me change my wording. Let me be less specific. See if I can find it on my own. If I just, let's say it's related to a Windows update. And without being specific, if I'm not able to find the problem, is it because the Windows update came out last night and there's not enough people yet to talk about it? Some problems just require patience and they fix themselves. Or rather, the parties responsible get around to it. It's not that the problem suddenly fixes itself, but that there's nothing you can really do. On the other hand, if the update's been out a while and I've never seen this problem before, is it the computer? And if I Google that update along with the error and I don't get really anybody even close, then just Google the update just to see what issues have people had. The other day, here's a prime example. Literally, this happened the other day. I had new tires put on my car. And it's been a while since I've worked on cars. Some things have changed. Stupid, simple things I just don't know anything about that they changed. After I get the car back and I'm driving it, I hear a loud snap. And I didn't drive over anything. And I think, well, I just got the car back from the tire shop. Good tire shop. Reputable tire shop. And I didn't hit anything. What's plastic on my car that could have just snapped? Because that's what it sounded like. Got to be a hubcap. Okay, well, I think I have hubcaps. Pretty sure I do. And I walk around the car and I don't see anything wrong with it. I've got a picture of it. It might be easier for me to show you. I'll tell you what this is about in a minute. That's later. I needed to just send a message. The car has something like a hubcap, but it's not called a hubcap. I'd never heard of this before. It's called a wheel skin. Now, I used to really be into cars. I'd work on them. I had all the tools. I could fix, I could do all the engine work. No transmission or suspension, but engine work left and right and center, no problems. Even electrical work, super easy for me. A wheel skin is kind of like a hubcap. Sometimes they'll call it a wheel cover, but it's not really called a wheel cover because that's more related to literally like something you cover over the wheel, the entire tire and everything. So let me show you the picture because it was such a subtle problem that I couldn't see it. For about a week, I didn't see this. And what I'm talking about is, you see how the rim is black? But that one right there is silver. I walked around, I didn't even notice it. So if you take the skin off, I have silver wheels. Exactly the same design. They look exactly the same. All we're doing is changing the color because it's a black car, and a black car with silver wheels looks okay, but a black car with black wheels looks better. But now I see the piece that broke off. And then I go to YouTube and I go, well, how do these wheel covers come off? Oh, they're super easy. You almost don't even need any tools. And I was like, wow, I had no idea they were doing that at the cars. In my day, if you had nice wheels, you showed them off. You didn't cover them up. But this is a way of changing the color of the wheel without having to replace the wheel or paint it. And it's called a wheel skin. If you'd asked me about wheel skins 2 weeks ago, I'd say in my 57 years, I don't know what you're talking about. But this has apparently been a thing for some time. Well, now that I know what it's called, now I can Google appropriately using the right terms, and sure enough, they're available online, and they're $25. No big deal. And I thought about taking it back to the car dealer or the place that did the tires and saying, hey, you broke this, but I can't be bothered. It's obviously a mistake. And for all I know, I don't know that they broke it. Maybe it's always been damaged, and what they did finally finished it off. I don't have any evidence to that because I've never changed the tires on the car ever. This is the first time. So imagine my surprise when I open up the floor of the trunk and there's a place for a spare tire, and I don't have a spare tire. I didn't realize there was no spare tire in this car. And then I look to the left and I have a factory installed air pump to put air in the tires. I've owned this car since 2021. I had no idea there was a tire inflator. I never looked, nor have I ever needed it. So for 4 years I've been driving this car, having no clue that there are wheel skins on my wheels. I have no clue that I don't need to keep a tire inflator with me, now that I was, because I already had one that came factory standard with the car. I know now. Honestly, the information wouldn't have helped me until I needed it. So I guess I'm on a need to know basis. And that's okay. I feel good about it. I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm keeping up with technology. I might be a little behind, but I'm not staying there. And then it makes me wonder what else I don't know. What else about this car don't I know? Well, apparently I don't need to know it yet. That's okay. But that's on me. I still do it to this day. Joshua says, use audit mode when setting up a client's computer. Well, again, there are many different ways. You'll never see me do that. And that's not saying what you're doing is wrong, but what you're doing is one way. And what I do is another way. And what somebody else does is yet another way. And all of these ways are 100% in alignment of value. If a customer comes in here with a PC repair and I'm not quite sure how to fix it yet, first thing I do is make an image backup of their drive. Then I can do whatever I want. There's no negative consequence. Worst case scenario is I make it worse. The whole situation gets worse. So I fall to the backup, recover it, it puts it back to the way it was. So I have the freedom to be bold in my repairs and not worry about consequences, because before I start working on it, I make a copy. And if I'm setting up a computer for a client, I don't want to set it up in a virtual environment, because I don't think that it's necessarily 100% accurate representation of what's supposed to be happening. Usually it is, but sometimes it isn't. So if I just do it the same way a customer would do it, then when I deliver it to the customer, I don't get very rarely get any surprises that anything was skipped over or missed. Now, when setting up computers in a corporation or a school or somewhere where you're dealing with hundreds of computers being set up constantly, things like audit mode and like cloning or even automated installs and scripts, those become much more valuable in that environment. In much the same way, I don't have a big heavy coat because I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Why would I need a big heavy coat unless I'm traveling up north or out of the county? But you, on the other hand, you might live somewhere in a very cold climate and you may not own a pair of shorts. Why would you? It's too cold. Neither one of us is doing anything wrong, and how we adjust to our environment is correct for us individuals. What makes you comfortable versus what makes me comfortable versus what climate you live in versus what climate I live in. So how we fix computers in a corporate level is very different from how we fix computers on a consumer level. And a lot of it has to do, from my experience, with how you're being held accountable. So if I work on a customer's computer, I'm only accountable to that customer and nobody else. But if I work on a fellow employee's computer in a large corporation, the work I've done is all documented. The amount of time it took me is documented. The amount of times I had to go back and redo it, it's all documented. And about every 3 months, you get a review, every 3 to 6 months, where your superior sits down with you in a one-on-one closed meeting and goes over your history of work over that period of time to determine whether or not you need training, you need to find another job, or you get a raise or a promotion. So how we do things in a corporate world that's being documented, recorded, and then you're held accountable to months later is going to determine the quality of your life. When I help an individual client, I just got to make sure that client's happy. That's it. As long as that client's happy, I'm good to go. That'll never come back to be audited later. So that's why I say there's more than one way to do things, and there's probably a preferable way to do things based on that environment and the situation you're in. But I would encourage people to be given all of the information and let them choose what way they like, rather than tell them what way they're supposed to. You eat that, you'll like it. Wait, can I eat anything else? No. Eat it and like it. That's, I don't know. I'm a little sensitive to that. Be you. Eat what you want to eat. Like what you like. Don't worry about if anybody else likes it. And give people options. Let them know. You don't have to eat that. You could have this or this or this or this. Which would you like? When they're old enough to make that decision, I think it's disrespectful to not offer it as though they're children and they can't think for themselves. I find it condescending and disrespectful. But it's just the way some people are. Maybe they were raised that way and that's how it was taught to them, and it never occurs to them to do any other thing because they haven't been in this situation. Like when I show you how I do repairs, I'm usually telling you, this isn't the only way to do this repair. It's just the way I do it. That's all. You want to follow it, you'll get the same result. You don't want to follow it, you could get the same result a whole different way. You might even be able to do it in half the time. I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me how you do it, nor should it matter to you how I do it. That's the point of it. It's mutual respect. And then if either one of us needs help, I'd hope a helping hand would be offered if asked. That's all. Not punishment. The greeting has said his car gets more updates than his computer does. Oh, that's funny. NY Renal MD said, here's something I would pick up. I had a blown tire on Christmas Eve. There are these screw-in fix-a-flat plugs. Oh, that's pretty interesting. I mean, unless your flat is on the sidewall of the tire or your tire had broken apart. I had no idea that they have these little screw-in things that can get you by. That's good to know. See, something like that could go in the trunk. Wouldn't take up much space. It's not a big investment. If you never need them, great. Little insurance, little knowledge. I didn't have that knowledge till just now. Maybe I'll pick some up, throw them in the back of the car. You never know. If it's very easy and inexpensive to be prepared, regardless of how unlikely the event is. Fact of the matter is, as long as you're driving the car, as long as that wheel's spinning on pavement, you never know what you're running over, do you? Until it causes a problem. And then if it's a hole that you can just easily do right there on the side of the road with a little kit that you just have, wonderful. On the other hand, if you never needed to use the kit, wonderful. When you sell the car or trade it in, you can take it out and put it in your next car, or just leave it in there and buy another one. That's great advice. I love it. All right, let me take a look here. How about some Oak Park stories? I'm from there. So I rode my bike to the zoo in Alligator Alley Arcade up there. That's John in the chat room. I don't know John, but Chris Johnson says Oak Park in Chicago. I don't think there's a city in a city. Oak Park in Chicago. There is an Oak Park, Illinois. I think that's what he meant. Oak Park, Michigan is a suburb of Detroit. It's right walking distance. The two touch. They share a border. About 14 miles to the Canadian border from Oak Park. Oak Park stories. Really, the Oak Park stories that come to mind are as a kid, just doing mischievous things. We got into some things we weren't supposed to. I mean, by today's standards, they're not that bad, but But I used to live across the street from the Detroit Zoo, what was called 10 Mile Road. It's now the 696 freeway. But when I lived there, it was 10 Mile Road. You know, we could cross 10 Mile, which was a very busy street, one lane in each direction. We'd just run across the street. And right there, across the street, was the fence, this big cement fence to the Detroit Zoo, and it had these metal grates like that were over. There was like a big square hole in the fence that was like a metal grate. It was like a design feature. And the weather and years had worn out many of the metal grates where you could pull them away from the concrete foundations. And we were little kids. We were, you know, probably this thin. We could get between the grate and the fence and then just go right into the zoo. Nobody in the zoo didn't know if you bought a ticket. They didn't have armbands or anything like that. You're in the zoo. And we just hang out in the zoo. And the other thing attached to the zoo was a golf course. The, what was it called? Rackham Golf Course, something like that. And the street I lived on was right where the zoo and the golf course met. So sometimes we'd sneak into the golf course. Like, we're kids, we got nothing to do. And we would pick up all the golf balls, like from the practice range. There'd be hundreds of them. And we'd just take our shirt and take as many golf balls as we could fit in our shirt and hold our shirts up as a little hammock to hold all the golf balls. And it's a short walk home, maybe a block and a half, if that. And we grab a hammer and a screwdriver, we'd crack those golf balls open. Then there'd be a bunch of rubber bands we'd remove. And in the middle was like a super ball. Like, you'd put a dime in the machine and turn the little handle, and you get the super ball, you bounce it, and it bounces really high. Well, that was inside of the center of a golf ball. We get those as much as we wanted for fun. It was something to do. We were never caught. We were never told not to do it. We knew it was wrong, but nobody ever complained, or they never put up signs, who's stealing our golf balls. I don't even think they missed them. I don't have any clue. But stuff like that, you know, from the age of, you know, where my memory starts is around 5 years old until we left when I was 12 years old. That was all defining who I became as an adult. Those were very formative years for me. And what we did to occupy our time, you know, we'd come home from school, we want to play. We'd go build a fort in the woods. We got into all kinds of mischievous stuff. But it's just kids being kids. I didn't rob a bank or kill anybody. Nothing like that. It was just silly kid stuff that was, you know, if you were caught, you'd be punished. But it wasn't a big deal, especially by today's standards. Elijah Dickens said it's a rainy day in D.C. Yeah, I wish we had some rain. We might get some rain up north. Mazda said Detroit is hell on earth. I don't think you've ever been to Detroit. That's the way oftentimes the media and movies will portray it. It's not like, no. If you asked me, would I rather be dropped off in downtown Detroit or in Compton, LA, or in Harlem, or, boy, there's some places in Alabama and Mississippi. Detroit's a paradise compared to that. What I love about the culture of Michigan is more than not, people are very kind and courteous to one another, much more than they are in Phoenix. There's a common respect and a mutual sort of, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Now, no matter where you go, there's always going to be bad people. But I can tell you, having lived in Phoenix and lived in Detroit and lived in San Diego and spent some time in Los Angeles, Detroit is the friendliest place I've ever lived in. And furthermore, I've gone back since just to verify, am I remembering it wrong, or am I remembering the 70s and it's not that way today? No. I even took Mara with me and I said, you tell me if it's me. Or are people just a lot nicer? They're still jerks, but the frequency of jerks, instead of 8 out of 10, it's like 1 out of 20. They're still jerks, but there's fewer of them. And the further north you go in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, the nicer people get. When you start moving out of the big urban areas, and that's probably true of anywhere, right? I mean, if you compare New York City, let's say, to Buffalo, I bet Buffalo's a lot calmer, less crowded, less pressure. It's probably a nicer place to be. That makes sense to me. So Detroit's a big city, right? So when you have crowds of people, you're going to have more problems. But the culture also makes a big difference too. So to each their own. The friendliest city I've ever been to is Chicago. And once again, I've been there several times. Did I just go on a good day, or is this normally the way Chicago is? Now, I wasn't going to the bad side of Chicago. I'm going to like the shopping district. I'm going to where the Navy Pier is. I'm sticking around that area of Chicago, and you won't find nicer people. Never. I made a wrong turn, and Amar and I were walking underneath all of the high rises. I didn't realize there was streets and garbage and all kinds of stuff hidden under the city. And I was a little intimidated by some of the desperate looking homeless people that looked like they had nothing to lose to attack us, take what we had on us. And apart from the smell, they never bothered us. They didn't say one word. I was walking by a homeless guy sleeping on a mattress in the street or by the street. I had nothing to say to him. I didn't stare at him. I didn't really, I acknowledged he could see that I see him. But I just kept minding my own business, and he minded his business, and there's another homeless person, and nobody bothered us. And then when I asked, I had stepped out of this hotel I was staying at. I had my camera around my neck, and I had a map in my hand, and I was ready to see Chicago, And as I step out of the building and I walk to the sidewalk, there's this little old lady. She's got a little walker or a cane, and she kind of looks at me and she says, looks like somebody's getting ready to see the city. I said, yeah, I'm out of town and really looking forward to it. And then she points at the hotel I stayed at. She goes, why'd you stay in that dump? Just a very friendly city. I love Chicago, but I also love Detroit. You know what I don't like is Phoenix. And do you know I've never met anybody here that likes it? I mean, Mara likes the weather, but everybody, whether it's Mitch or Subaru Mike, they want to get out of here. It's rude, overcrowded. Everybody's pushy. Nobody's patient. Nobody's understanding. And some people refuse to speak your language. They want to speak a different language. They might have been here longer than you have, and they absolutely flat out refuse to communicate with you, claiming they don't know how to talk your language. And the propensity of that, the amount of it, makes me feel like I'm living in another country sometimes, like I'm the one who doesn't fit in. Like if I moved to Spain, or if I moved to Italy, or if I moved to France, and I'm insisting everybody speak to me in English, that would be on me. But that's what it feels like here sometimes, where you'll go to entire neighborhoods and entire shopping markets, and it's very difficult to have any communication with people. And then I just wonder, is it me, or am I really not welcome here? Because I really get the sense they don't want me there. And I have a right to be there as an American, but is that a right I'm willing to fight for? So I just tend to just say, okay, I don't go to a church because I don't belong there either. So I don't go there. I don't think it's a problem with the church. I think it's a problem with me. I feel very subconscious if somebody says, hey, come on into my church. I'll come in. I'll be polite. I probably will never go back because I'm not comfortable. I don't belong there. But it's a nice gesture. And I think, in Michigan, it's really fascinating to me that I can live in the same country, but the United States is so big that when you move from one state to another state, the culture shift is just like being in another country. The mentality of people in Texas and Oklahoma is very different than the mentality of people in, let's say, New York, New Jersey, or even Connecticut, which is very different from the people in Maine or New Hampshire, which is very different from the people in Washington and Oregon and San Francisco, which is very different from the people in Idaho and Iowa and Nebraska, which is very different from the cowboys in Wyoming. Like, I thought there were cowboys in the West. No, there are not. Basically, growing up as a kid, I thought, you know, the West, that's Tombstone, that's your cowboys. There's a term for what these cowboys are called out here. Can't think of what, maybe you guys in the chat know what I'm talking about. But, you know, basically they wear the cowboy clothes, they drive the cowboy truck. All cowboy, no cattle, something like that, I think is the expression. But when you go to Wyoming, those are real cowboys. Those are people driving cattle. Those are people with a work truck that looks like it's been beaten daily. They don't just dress the part in Wyoming. Like, I thought I knew what a cowboy was. I'm from Arizona. I know what a cowboy. No. When I went to Yellowstone and I was in like Jackson Hole, Wyoming, wow, the cowboys are everywhere. And these are people that could, you know, they probably wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. They do a solid 12 hours of hard labor of work. These are hardy, no nonsense individuals. They're nice, but they're no nonsense. They'll tell you just, you know, how it is. They're very confident. They're very capable. They don't just dress like a cowboy. They actually do the hard work every single day, and it shows. It shows in the lines on their face. It shows in their attitude and the way that they walk. Everything exudes this this culture. In Arizona, mostly people dress like cowboys. That's the extent. So if you want to be a cowboy here, just dress like a cowboy, drive a pickup truck, put some Skoal chewing tobacco in your back pocket, get a big old belt buckle, a big hat, and listen to country music, you're on board. That ain't gonna fly in Wyoming. No. That was a big eye-opener for me. Wow. Because I didn't think there were still cowboys in today's world. Oh yes, there are. Very much. Just not in this part of the country. So it's like you're in another country, just going to another state. It can be so different. And what's interesting is the way the media will portray the stereotypes, and Detroit is one of those, unfortunately, it's so exaggerated. If you go there, you'll realize it's all a lie. Any part of any big city has a bad part of town. Phoenix has a bad part of town. Where you live, I'm sure there's a bad part of town. Detroit has a bad part of town. And that's where the news media likes to go. Just a few blocks of bad area. That's it. It's really not very crowded. It's not that populated. And if you were to go there, you'd probably be left alone anyway. There's not enough people there to even realize you know, if I'm walking in a bad part of town in Detroit in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday, I'm probably the only one. There's probably nobody else around. It's pretty empty. On the other hand, it's not threatening. It can be, but so can Compton, and so can Harlem, and so can Central Park be after dark. You know, all of these places, depending on time of day and just timing, you know, you could have a good story to tell or a bad story. But overall, at least today, Detroit is not as the media has made it out to be. It ain't RoboCop. Remember, RoboCop took place in Detroit. There's no guy on TV going, I'd buy that for $1. You think about all these amazing people that have come out of Michigan, and I'm so proud of it, whether it's Jack White of the White Stripes or Madonna, Bob Seger, Ted Nugent, all these talented people. And then on the engineering side, it's Henry Ford, it's William Durant, it's so many such a pinnacle of innovation and changed the country from just that one city and how much that extended across the United States. It's really sad to see that those times have moved on. But the music and the creation, the creativity, so many people just work together in Michigan, and they suffer together in the winters. When people talk about celebrities that have the money to live anywhere they want to live, what's interesting to me is that Jeff Daniels, famous Hollywood celebrity, lives in Chelsea, Michigan. He can live anywhere he wants. He's got plenty of money. That's where he wants to live. The famous musician, Prince, did he buy a Hollywood mansion and move to LA to get out of Minnesota? Of course not, because he knows better. Prince's life was built, he built a mansion, was it called Paisley Park or something, in Minnesota. And the media was so confused. Why do you choose to live in Minnesota? What a hellhole. And he's just smiling, going, oh man, you have no idea what a paradise it is. That's so sad, but good for me, because I don't want you there. Please stay out. You stay in LA with the rest of the people like you. I'm going to stay with my people in Minnesota because it's better. When a celebrity that can't say, I have to live here, right? I have to live in Phoenix. I'm stuck here. I can't afford to go anywhere else. I don't want to be here. Mitch doesn't want to be here. Subaru Mike doesn't want to be here. Well, why are we here? Because we don't have a choice. When you're wealthy and you can go anywhere you want and that's where you choose to be, how it's portrayed on the television versus what people actually do, I think that's quite an interesting thing to pay attention to. Let's face it, RoboCop is a fun movie. And the fact that it takes place in Detroit doesn't bother me. We have fun with it, as if it was really that bad. That's great. I love that it was Detroit. It wouldn't have been the same if it was Los Angeles. Beverly Hills Cop. The character, Axel Foley, is a Detroit police officer. I love that. He's this rough and tumble, rough around the edges, fair is fair, justice-minded individual, fictional, from Detroit. These are my people. We are, as people from Detroit, we are so proud of these movies, and we're so grateful, to have it exaggerated in such a way. But the downside is people actually believe that stuff. It's not like that. And the only way I can tell if somebody's really been to Michigan or not is if they make a comment like, Detroit's a hellhole. You clearly have never been there. Or you were there back in the 60s during the riots or something. It's just not that way anymore. But that's okay. It makes you feel good. By, putting down somewhere makes you feel better about where you are. Maybe it's a survival technique. I'm not sure, but I think the reality, if it were verified, would prove out to be it's a very nice place. Could be better, but then we can say that about anywhere. There's Bill Sony there. They're joining us, saying hello. John Palek said, my parents are from Dearborn, and my mom went to Edsel Ford High School. Edsel? Edsel? You mean Edsel? Yeah. Thomas Backenstow was mentioning Eminem. Eminem wasn't raised too far from me. He did live in a very bad part of town. If you think every mile there's a major road, and I lived at 10 Mile, and then the next road in a certain direction would be 9 Mile, and then the next road moving in that same direction would be 8 Mile. Eminem lived on 8 Mile, or off of 8 Mile. I lived off of 10 Mile. And then, of course, there's an east and west difference. I was more west, and Eminem, Marshall Mathers, he was more east. So he was in a rough neighborhood, but it wasn't that far away. In fact, there's a city, if you want to look it up here on YouTube or on Google, there is a private high school surrounded by mansions, and it looks like a university campus, like a fancy, expensive ivory college, and it's just a private high school. And it is called, and it was really close to where I grew up, just a few miles away. So a few miles away to Eminem Town, a few miles the opposite direction to riches beyond your beliefs. They're not that far apart. What was it called? It's still around. God, it's beautiful. It'll come to me. Anytime I'm back in Detroit, I love to go there. It's, it's an open public area. You can walk around the campus. Beautiful gardens and statues and architecture. Unbelievable. That's why you really need to see it on YouTube. See somebody walking around the grounds. It's massive. It looks like an ivory college, and it's just a private high school. And then when you drive around it to the neighborhoods, the houses are immaculate brick miniature castles, one after the other. What was it called? I say was like it's not there anymore. It's still there. I want you to be able to look at it if you're interested, because it's it'll drop your jaw. It's so gorgeous and immaculate and fancy, and it's also not hoity-toity like, Rodeo Drive or anything like that. It's not all gilded everything and garish, and it's very elegant, but it's not like it's trying to show off, or in the way that it's showing off. It only goes so far, okay? And when you pay real close attention to the architecture of the buildings, there's fine handcrafted carvings that were formed into the sides of the buildings, like around the windows, in the corner of the windows. And you'd have to take a tour really to have that pointed out. But the architectural designs of these buildings, there's so much detail this big in a building, 3 stories, 4 stories tall, that would be so easy for your eyes to pass over, that when somebody points it out and you go, oh, wow, someone spent a lot of time on it. What was the name? Cranbrook. Like cranberry? Cranbrook. So if we go to YouTube, let's see what happens. Let me bring up let's bring up YouTube. And my phone is making an awful lot of beeps, so I think I'm going to silence that. Hold on a minute. Where's my speaker? There it is. We get a lot of birds that try to eat the cat food that Mara likes to leave out for the strays, and they trigger all the motion sensors on the camera about this time of day. That's usually when I'm like, okay, I'm not usually broadcasting this late, so this doesn't normally occur during a live feed, but that's what the beeps are. It's detecting motion. When it's detecting that much motion outside, it's probably pigeons. That's about the only wildlife we have out here. We don't get blue jays or red robins. We basically get pigeons, and that's it. And maybe these little, what they call thrashers, and woodpeckers, which are really annoying. But anyway, let's go over to Microsoft Edge. Let's do it this way. Cranbrook School, Michigan. There we go. Oh, look, we get an ad. Is it trying to tell me something? Oh, good, another ad. Let me fast forward. I want you to like look at that statue up there and look at the little carvings into the brick. And by the way, just him walking to the entrance here, you don't get to see the beauty of it. It's just gorgeous. And he's there on a nice day. The trees have leaves. Do you see anybody around? Is it overcrowded? Hey, there's a little kid on a bike playing all by himself without adult supervision. Oh, maybe there is an adult over there. Look at, so there's different buildings on this campus. Some are like the architectural building. There might be a history building. There may be a social sciences building. Some of these buildings are over 100 years old and are, look at this. It looks like a church. That's a schoolroom. That's a classroom. And if you just turn your head, you're surrounded by these buildings in this beautiful, what the British would call a garden or a yard that is immaculately maintained all year round. So whoever the landscaper here is, they got a job for life. That's like a Harry Potter building. Do you see how tall the windows are? When you walk inside of that building, you can look straight up. There's not 3 floors. It's 1 floor that's 3 stories tall. So you feel like you're 2 inches tall when you walk in there. Look at the individual panes of glass. Look at all of the care and precision in the engineering. And many of these buildings have basements, which is why if we go back, you will see there's windows right down there at the ground, which could be a problem if you get flooding. See the little faces? You could walk right by that and not even notice. There's little details that they don't spend time today to do this. They want to get it done fast and cheap. Back in the day, oh my gosh, when people had pride and they wanted things to last, look at this courtyard. This is a high school. This is high school. An expensive private high school. Look at the door on that building. Do you have any idea? There's some really cool sculptures and architecture. And again, the details are insane. Look at that door. That's not artificial. That's 100%. Look at the carvings over the door and along the sides of the door. Oh my gosh, I miss this place. To just come here on the weekend, you know, and just walk around, especially on a beautiful day, you couldn't see it all. And if you did, you weren't paying attention to any of the details. And some of the buildings are open and you can walk inside. So it just depends where he is. There's fountains and ponds. There's gardens. There's a little wooded area you can walk in between the buildings. This, I want to say it one more time, is a high school. That's crazy. And this wasn't too far from where I grew up. And at the same time, neither was where Eminem grew up, very far from where I grew up. Just a few miles, one direction or the other. But I don't want to steal somebody's content, so if you guys want to watch it, I'm sure there's plenty more videos where that came from, whether it's from a tourist like myself or if it's, you know, some kind of paid marketing material, which may be what we were looking at. It's jaw-droppingly gorgeous. And you're just a stone's throw away from Detroit. Not very far from Detroit at all. And yeah, I mean, you don't see that in the movies, right? They don't show that part of Michigan. Sometimes they do. There's a famous movie called Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve that takes place on Mackinac Island. There's a movie called Belle Isle starring Morgan Freeman that takes place on the Belle Isle, right in the Detroit River. It's a beautiful little island that people go and have picnics and barbecues, and Belle Isle is a beautiful movie and beautiful scenery. And across from Detroit, like literally downtown Detroit is right there, except that it's an island in the river. Other than that, you're in Detroit, Belle Isle. In fact, the Indianapolis 500, the day after, or the next couple days, it may not be the day after, but the next Indy race is the Belle Isle race. And they changed the island to a racetrack so the Indianapolis 500 is Memorial Day, right? So then the Belle Isle race will be, let me Google it. It'll be like a couple days after. When is the Indy race at Belle Isle? It'll be the week after. The Detroit Grand Prix, which is the IndyCar series held on the Belle Isle street circuit, so they just use the streets, is scheduled rather from May 29th to May 31st. So we're just a week away. And it's beautiful. It's a 100 lap, 164.5 mile circuit. And I think Chevrolet is the company that usually sponsors it. Now, when I was living there, there wasn't such a thing. This all started in 1992, about 12 years after I left. But as you can imagine, it gets very crowded if you wanted to attend it. You can, but it's popular. As you can imagine, there's a lot of car fans in Michigan, especially in Detroit. Then you've got the Woodward Avenue Dream Cruise, which occurs in August every year, which is right down the street from where I grew up. And it's just everybody's welcome. The focus is on classic Detroit cars, muscle cars. But you'll see Ferraris and you'll see exotic imports, and nobody gets shunned because it's not from Detroit. There's a very welcome, if it's on four wheels, even if it's a piece of crap, but you're struggling along in the Dream Cruise, your car's barely moving, people will cheer you on. They love it. People will set up, because there's like restaurants and bars along it's a regular road with businesses. People will start to reserve their spot days or even a week ahead of time so that they have a good front row seat to the cars. And all the cars do is they move very slowly down Woodward Avenue, turn around, go back the other way, and turn around and do it again. I don't know how many miles it is, but the crowd goes on for miles, and it's free. You just show up and find a seat, find a place to stand, or find a place to park, and find where you can stand up on the sidewalk or something and watch. It's all free. Or join in. If you've got a regular car, it's not like Woodward Avenue is closed. Just get into the group. Cruise with everyone else. They love it. You won't be going anywhere very fast, but just you don't have to buy a ticket. You don't have to like fill out a form and have your car be pre-qualified. It's a public road. It doesn't stop becoming that. So if you want to be part of the parade, hop on in. Everybody's welcome. And there are custom cars where there's a car that looks like it's upside down. They designed it with the wheels to appear to be coming from the hood, from the roof of the car. And then you look inside and the person's actually sitting right side up and the car's upside down, and they engineered it that way. There's crazy things people have created. And then of course there's traditional, classic, exotic and foreign imports. And it's just fun. And it goes on for days. It's not like it's an hour. It goes on for days. Not a hellhole. Far from it. Did they have to shut Detroit down at night? Not that I'm aware of. Not in my lifetime. Maybe in the riots in the 1960s before I was born, there was maybe a curfew or something, but I've never heard of that in my lifetime. You know something I don't? Elijah Dickens said Michigan Avenue would take you straight to Dearborn. So Dearborn is where Chrysler headquarters. What's interesting is there's only one car company in Detroit. Out of the big three from Michigan, they say from Detroit, they're really not from Detroit. Only one is from Detroit. So I think Chrysler is Dearborn, and I think Ford, hold on, I can Google this. Where is Ford located? Ford is located in Dearborn. Okay, then where's Chrysler? Oh, Chrysler is Auburn, Michigan. I got them confused. Chrysler is located Auburn Hills, Michigan. And Chevrolet, which would be GM, they have the biggest tower you see in downtown Detroit, that round cylinder with several other round cylinder high rises surrounding it. That's the GM headquarters. So only GM is really from Detroit. Nobody else. The others are from Michigan. Auburn Hills is Chrysler, Ford is Dearborn, and General Motors. The biggest high rise that you can see in the skyline in downtown Detroit, that is General Motors. So they're the only ones really from Detroit. Spikeman said, downriver portion of Michigan has cruising downriver at the end of June each. Oh, I didn't realize that was even a thing. That doesn't surprise me. I don't need to fact check that because that sounds exactly like something people in Michigan would do. So I have no doubt that's true. There's something else about Pontiac, Michigan. Yeah, I don't. The Silver Dome was a pretty big deal. They had just built it when I was a kid living there. It's gone now, but in fact, the implosion of it went horribly wrong. And that's on YouTube if you want to watch when they were. In my life, I got to see this brand new, amazing Silver Dome sports arena, and also got to see them implode it, and the implosion did not work. It was pretty bad. But it's interesting to watch on YouTube. They got it the second time. NY Renal MD said, with the internet and AI, I see all the cities sort of dying over the next decades. Yeah, well, you know, who knows how we evolve from here? It's really hard to say. I think it's pretty stupid that we've all decided we're all going to live in these little concentrated areas. Whose idea was that? It's not how it used to be. Before the big cities, how did people used to live? And you know, we didn't have cars, right? There weren't much in the way of roads. Everything was horse-driven carriages. And there were a lot of carriage makers, like Fisher, in the early 1900s and of course the 1700s and the 1800s. When the industrial revolution really took over, that's when people started moving to where the work is. And then that's when home builders started building homes in what we call the suburbs. So you could be closer to work, and then you could buy a car, and then they could put in roads, and you can go back and forth. And then, you know, they were creating grocery stores, and they would have, say there would be somebody selling groceries, but then there'd be a baker, and the grocery store didn't sell baked goods. They didn't compete against the bakers. And then there'd be a shoe store, and there'd be a haircut place, and there would be all these little mom and pop shops, the little hardware store to get your nails and screws. It wasn't a Home Depot and Walmart. And so downtown was bustling because while you were going to work or coming home from work, these were all places you could stop on the way home to pick up whatever you needed. and you would stop at several different stores to figure out, which store sold what you needed at that time. Now today, by comparison, you have a Walmart the size of a city block practically that has clothes and groceries and baked goods, and well, you can buy tires for your car, you can buy pesticide and lawnmowers and bicycles for the kids and presents for their birthdays and makeup and soap and shampoo and oh my gosh, but that's not how it used to be. So if the next phase is that we break apart these downtown areas, so because the United States is huge, but the populations are Miami, right? San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, Detroit. And the rest of the cities, or the rest of the state is pretty empty. If you go to literally anywhere in Michigan, away from Detroit, it's beautiful. So this little tiny speck the size of my pinky nail would represent the amount of space Detroit takes in the state of Michigan. And if my hand here is the shape of Michigan, never mind the peninsula, which is also Michigan, just this part, that little pinky nail is a fraction of the rest of my hand. And the rest of my hand is lakes, lots and lots of lakes, beautiful big oak trees, maple trees. These aren't trees you easily cut down that have been there 100+ years. And these little towns, and all the little towns in Michigan, they all kind of look alike to me. So if you go downtown Traverse City, or you go downtown Ann Arbor, or you go downtown Grand Rapids is a pretty big city. I would say downtown of any city in Michigan, they all have these little, they could be a couple blocks long, parking, you park vertically, not against the sidewalk, but towards the sidewalk. You get out of your car and you walk, and they're all little mom and pop shops, just like the old days. It's amazing. And the only place you don't see that in Michigan would be maybe Grand Rapids, Detroit, the giant cities. And the rest of the state makes Detroit and all the big cities look minuscule by comparison. There's lots of room. Why everybody has to concentrate in one little area is just simply because that's where they're going to make money. But if we don't have to do that anymore, boy, we can get rid of a lot of congestion, we can get rid of a lot of emissions problems, we can get rid of a lot of overcrowding problems. When we get rid of the overcrowding problems, we reduce conflict with people who don't get along and create fights or worse. We get away from gangs. We get away from people begging. Basically, if you live in another city in Michigan, like, I don't know, Chelsea, Michigan, where Jeff Daniels lives, you won't see a homeless person holding a sign asking for money. Bay City, I didn't see anybody sleeping on a sidewalk or a street. Not one. In Phoenix, everywhere. In Los Angeles, you can't get around it. They're on display, almost like they're boasting about their homelessness. And that creates all different kinds of problems when you're dealing with a bunch of people who feel like they have nothing to lose, and you seem like you have a lot more than they have, and they might just choose to take it from you. Worst thing happens is they go to jail, and now they've got a roof over their head and a meal, which they didn't have before. So even if they lose, they win. We have a viewer, if you remember, nice young man named Austin, and when we went to Michigan, we visited him in the city of Bay City, and I said, where's all the homeless people? This place it was so weird to me because they're everywhere. Very common in Phoenix and Los Angeles and places I'm typically going to these days. And it didn't feel right. I'm like, something's missing. Oh, there's no homeless anywhere. And they said, no, we have homeless. We just have shelters and we take care of them. Oh, our shelters are full. There's no room for any more people in the shelters. They don't have a choice. Wow. There's a bit of uncomfortableness when like I talked about walking underneath Chicago, underneath the downtown buildings, where nobody bothered us, but it's on me. It's just how I feel. I feel like most people probably won't cause me harm and don't have any reason to. I feel like those people have nothing to lose and have every reason to try and take something. Nobody did. But it sort of raised the hairs on the back of my neck. Like, be alert, be aware. Don't be too relaxed here. Be respectful. Don't start anything. Mind your own business. And let's not go through there ever again. Even though nothing bad happened. In Phoenix, you don't want to drive with your windows down because apparently that's an invitation to walk up to your car and ask you to give them some money. Because you got off the freeway, you're sitting at the light at the off-ramp of the freeway, and almost every off-ramp in Phoenix, there's a homeless person. No matter what direction you're traveling, there's a homeless person on this corner, another homeless person on that corner, one on the opposite side of the freeway going the other way on that corner. And they're not necessarily causing any harm. It's just awkward. I got a sign, woe is me, please give me some money. And then some of these people are making more money a day than I am. And they just don't, I mean, why would they brag about it? Do you think they ever have enough money? If they break in $500 because someone keeps giving them money, they'll be back tomorrow. Then I think maybe I should be out there holding a sign because that's tax-free, unaccounted for cash. I'm not saying they're all making a lot of money, but certainly some of them are making better money than I am. Or better money than the people they're asking money from. And since I can't tell the real people that are destitute from the fake ones, I'm uncomfortable and I feel awkward in that scenario. So the windows are up. Don't even talk to me. Just to avoid any sort of awkward interaction. I'd rather I'm driving, trying to go somewhere. I didn't come here to talk to you standing on the corner. That's not why I'm here. I don't recall seeing anybody begging for money in Michigan and Detroit. When I was through Detroit last time, I didn't see. When I was there last time, it was a few years ago, downtown Detroit, it was empty. It wasn't like there were gangs or thugs or homeless. There was just nobody. Now it's a lot better, but it wasn't the way the media painted it out to be at all, from my experience. And why Renal MD said there are people who just want to live outside and they don't want help or rules. Yeah, that's true. And why Renal MD said a colleague of mine grew up in Grosse Pointe. I was surprised it was Detroit. Yeah, we'll call it Detroit. There's a great movie starring John Cusack called Grosse Pointe Blank, where he's an assassin. Grosse Pointe is a very affluent area of Michigan, suburb of Detroit, where the rich people live. But you're going to hear me talk about where the rich people live, like Cranbrook, which I think is that Bloomfield Hills? Maybe that's the secret, if you're not from there, is you don't realize the wealth. It's not Beverly Hills. If you took Beverly Hills and you exploded it across the state of California, you'd be closer to Michigan in that way. It's not all just concentrated in one little spot like Bel Air. You've got Grosse Pointe, and you have countless other little cities that you may never even have heard of. We're just driving through, you'll see these giant homes on acres and acres of land, and you think, wow, that person must be loaded. Well, that person could be the CEO of General Motors, or could be the CEO of Ford. You know, they're not going to live too far from where they work, right? So there are areas that are just amazingly gorgeous and profoundly wealthy that make the homes in Beverly Hills look like shacks. But that's not usually what the media is grabbing onto. What the media will grab onto is something that they feel the audience wants to see. So you want to see downtrodden in Detroit, we're going to show you downtrodden in Detroit. And if you want to see luxurious mansions, we're going to show you Bel Air in Beverly Hills. That's just the way the media works. There are clearly beautiful places in all states. You know, I think of Elvis's Graceland in Tennessee. There's some wealth in Tennessee. There's some wealth in Hawaii. There's some wealth if you've ever been to Alpine, Colorado, or Aspen. Holy cow, you've never seen such big, beautiful homes, one after the other, copper roofs. Just the kind of money I've never seen in real life. Just not too far from Phoenix, a couple hours drive. Find yourself in, well, it's more than a couple hours, but, you know, maybe 12 hours, 10 hours. Find yourself in Aspen, Colorado, and I don't care how wealthy you are, you're probably going to feel pretty poor. It's crazy. You find wealthy people where there are ski resorts for sure. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, do they show it off over there. But, you know, I think the nature is also a lot nicer in Michigan. I think you know, there's no caterpillars here in Phoenix. We have scorpions. There's no scorpions in Michigan. They have ticks. We don't really have bears or things like that. We have coyotes, but in Michigan, you'll have possum and raccoons, pretty colorful birds of all colors singing songs, very pleasant bird song. Huge trees generating oxygen combined with the frequent rain makes the air feel clean, fresh. We don't get much rain. It's all dusty and it's in the air, and it affects how food tastes. So I can have a Coke in a bottle in Phoenix and drink a Coke in a bottle in Michigan, and the Coke in Michigan tastes better. And the only conclusion I can come to is it's got to be the effect of the air, the quality and pureness of the air. It's affecting my taste buds. People say, yeah, but the winters are harsh. Well, sure, they are. No argument from me there. But that's what makes a man out of you. That's what toughens you up. You want to be lazy your whole life and never get off the couch? You think it's going to be the secret to a long life? Get out there and shovel that snow. It's good for you. Put air on your chest. Or be a snowbird. Have a place in Michigan 6 months out of the year, and when it gets cold, have a place in the West, like Phoenix. Live there. Wouldn't be 6 months. I think a lot of people come out from their cold climate homes, maybe they consider that home, to their Arizona retreat for the months of, let's say, probably November until March. November, December, January, February, March. 5 months. And then once all the snowbirds leave Phoenix and they go back home to wherever they're from, all of a sudden, there's half as much traffic on the roads. And you're like, oh, it's weird. Usually this time of day, there's a lot more traffic. Oh, it's March. They all went home. They don't want to be here in the summer. They want to be back in Iowa, or they want to be back in Michigan, or in some cases, Alaska. But then when it starts getting cold there, come around November time, and certainly by Thanksgiving, back over in Phoenix again. And then the population, so many people do that. In certain cities, the populations triple, not double, they triple from what they are during the off season. And if you think that doesn't have an impact on traffic and how busy stores are, you should come here and experience it sometime. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying I should do what everybody else is doing. I don't know how to afford it, but wouldn't it be great? Get the best of both worlds. All right, well, I just wanted to hang out with you guys. I've been lately so focused on trying to do reviews and kind of keeping the channel true to its nature, which is supposed to be about tech, whether that's upgrades, repairs, NAS devices, mini PCs. That sometimes I feel that I'm allowing the channel to get a little too corporate, and I don't want that. I still want it to maintain this human level of contact where we just talk about nothing without any time limit. Oh, I got to do this test, or I got to figure out how this thing opens, or I got to wait for this Windows update before I can do the next thing. This is so nice to just hang out with you guys and just talk like friends do with no agenda. But at the same time, I don't want the channel to just be that either. So in all of this, I'm trying to find some balance between work and play. Mostly work with a little bit of play. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me now, or hanging out with me today, because it just goes to show that you're not necessarily just here for a business transaction, but rather, you know, to just enjoy company. And I certainly enjoy it. I haven't heard from Buster. I think I did put him to sleep. Speaking of which, you know, he sends me pictures and videos of Edinburgh, Scotland. Man, it looks beautiful. One of these days. What's interesting about what I've read about Edinburgh is a lot of the restaurants, like downtown, they're mostly mom and pop. There's almost no chains. There's no really McDonald's or Burger King or Kentucky Fried Chicken, any of that stuff. It's mostly just family-owned stuff, more so than anything else. And the result is, you know, you don't have people working a job with resentment. They love what they do and they take pride in what they do. And we don't see that a lot in Phoenix. A lot of mom and pop shops just can't compete with the big chains. So despite that they care more about the quality and pricing and stuff like that, it just doesn't financially work out when you're competing against the corporations that want to turn over customers as though they were cattle. Just put a barcode on you and move you along the line. They do financially very well. And I'm kind of sick of it. You couldn't tell. I much prefer a mom and pop shop. I much prefer when I walk in somewhere, someone recognizes me and I know them. They're the owner. And they say, hey, Carey, you want the chicken wings today? You can still get a little bit of that in Phoenix, but it's few and far between. Whereas in certain little cities, in Michigan especially, you'll see the same waiter working a restaurant for 40 years. And that waiter knows that menu inside out. You can ask him any questions you want, and he loves his job, or she loves her job. They take a lot of pride in it, and the quality of the service is outstanding, and the food tastes incredible, and the prices are very reasonable. It's hard to believe that exists, because where I live, that's a dreamland, but it's real. I've experienced it. It does exist. Of course I want to live there. Who wouldn't? NY Renal MD said, here in Palm Springs, our population surges in the winter. Sure, yeah. Well, I suppose I'll just check my phone here one more time, and then we'll wrap it up for today. Like I said, I just had some spare time, and I thought I want to hang out with you guys. I didn't know if you guys wanted to hang out with me, but I'm so glad you did. Let's see. I think we're caught up on everything and nothing really came in, which is fine. It's a nice day to just chill out. And if we can help you out with anything, you know, we're always happy to get your messages. If you want to email us, the email address I'll put right here on the screen. Thanks to Mara, of course, for all the work she does in the background, and all the prep work she does to get ready for these shows that I used to have to do everything by myself. So it's so nice to have the help, especially when she does a better job at it than I did. She can focus her skills and talents on that.
Yeah, there's some stuff with this one.
Stuff?
I'll tell you later.
You talking about like video notes and thumbnail, or what are you talking about stuff?
Besides all that. We'll talk.
Okay, well, apparently I have a meeting scheduled for after the show. And we got to start talking about what's for dinner.
I already know what mine is.
Something healthy. That's vague. I'm looking for something specific.
I would love a salad.
That's vague.
What kind of protein?
Still vague. You have to name a specific place.
You have a category of 7.
There's 7 foods I eat according to her. You only eat 7 things, Carey.
No. I didn't say that. I said you have a category.
7 categories of foods. Meat, chicken, fish, only certain kinds of fish. Pasta, pizza, Italian food.
Your category.
Hold on, I'm trying to come up with the other 2.
Spaghetti back. I could use some broccoli.
There's one spaghetti factory left in Phoenix, and it's a long drive from here. And on a Saturday, oh my gosh, it's going to be busy. Sorry I asked. I'm sorry I asked. Never mind. We'll figure it out.
You got more pizzas to
believe it or not, I'm a little sick of pizza right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
I had the best pizza I ever had yesterday, and I couldn't stop eating it, and my stomach was so full, it was hard for me to even fall asleep. And I'm not hungry even today. I'm satisfied. Not sick of it. I'm satisfied. And I don't feel the need to try another pizza so soon, because I'm still in a glorified haze of pleasantness from how amazing that pizza was last night. Ron Barnish is saying hello. He says his chemo isn't working, but I'm still alive, he says, but I don't know how much longer. Well, you know, Ron, we all face these challenges, and I'm sorry to hear that chemo's not working, but maybe they'll come up with another plan. Maybe there's some alternates, or maybe it's time to get a second opinion somewhere. Maybe you already have. But you're not alone, and we're here. We wish you well, and we hope you're going to be with us a very long time. Just don't quit on us. Don't give up the fight. Stay in the fight. When you quit the fight, as with many other things, boy, I'll tell you what, it sucks for the rest of us that will have to be without your company, without your friendship. So if you don't stay in the fight for yourself, I hope you stay in the fight for your friends and family. And, you know, I'm not a doctor, obviously. I can't tell you anything useful to help you other than I can distract you. I can let you know you're appreciated. And I can tell you we hope you stick around a very, very long time. We appreciate the update on your health. And I hope you will continue to update us on your health for many years. So like I said, you can reach out to us at our email address if you have any questions, if you need some help with a computer problem. I'm here. It's what I do. Happy to help you. If you've got a computer you want fixed or upgraded, you want to see what it would cost to get it over to me and have me work on it, I would love that. That's great content for us. But it starts with asking. Don't assume it's not going to be feasible. It depends what it is, what it's worth, and what it'll cost to ship. right? If it's a big, heavy mini, full-size tower computer versus a mini PC, there's a big difference. If it's 10 years old versus if it's 3 years old, how much money and how much trouble it's worth to fix. We're happy to discuss it with you regardless of whatever the outcome tends to be. There's no harm in asking, because it does make for great content and it helps you. It helps us, and the viewers love stuff like that. But it all starts with you reaching out to us. We're not knocking on neighbor's door. Do you have any computer work for me? Do you have any computer work? Do you have any computer work? You initiate it, we'll respond, and let's see if it goes somewhere. Worst case scenario is, okay, we looked into it, so what? Didn't work out? Sometimes it could work out in a way you never even thought of. So don't hesitate if you have that kind of a thought and you want to just know for a fact what's involved, if it's feasible or not. Otherwise, you're just using your imagination. Just saying verify it. Won't cost you anything. Mark Gaines said, "This stream has been a welcome distraction as I was not sleeping." Apparently, I should start a Dreamcast. I guess I can't call it that. That's probably trademarked by Sega. Come listen to Carey talk. It'll put you to sleep. So I want to say goodbye to everybody, and thank you again for hanging out. We'll be back live tomorrow with a typical show, looking at a brand new unboxing of an A00 star laptop that includes RAM and storage, and it's under $400 price tag. I think that's what it is. We also have another A00 star, completely different model that is bare bones. And I decided I'm not in the mood to have to, we just did a bare bones, So we'll save that for another day. So tomorrow, if you want to join us and take a look at this A00 star, is a very affordable mid-range computer. Better than budget, but not as good as high-end. That I think meets most people's, it does more than meet, it exceeds most people's needs. With resources and availability and pricing. But you decide. That's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We hope to see you then. And thank you guys so much for hanging out again. It's a pleasure hanging out with you guys. And I just love this. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I do, because I love it. That's going to wrap it up, and we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, bye for now.